My name is Daniel Brown, and I'm 61 years old. For most of my life, I believed that a father's job was to protect his child at all costs. I spent 3 decades in the military, putting myself in hostile territories and surviving situations most people couldn't imagine. But nothing in all those years prepared me for the night my own daughter tried to kill me. It started in the kitchen, on what should have been an ordinary evening. I had been feeling unwell earlier that day. Sharp stomach pain, dizziness, waves of nausea that came and went without warning. My daughter, Teresa, had suggested making me something light to eat. She smiled sweetly, told me it would help me recover. It sounded thoughtful, even caring. But when you've lived a lifetime training your eyes to notice details, you don't stop just because you're at home. I stood quietly at the doorway, watching her work. 2 bowls of soup sat on the counter, both steaming in the warm light of the kitchen. Teresa leaned over the left bowl with an intensity that didn't belong in something so ordinary as dinner preparation. Her hand moved quickly, almost too quickly, stirring in something that caught the glint of the overhead light. Then I saw it, a vial no bigger than my thumb, filled with a white powder. She tipped it in, stirred with practiced efficiency, and tucked the vial into her pocket as if nothing had happened. My breath froze. My daughter wasn't seasoning my food, she was poisoning it. Every instinct in me screamed to shout, to demand answers, to grab the bowl and throw it across the room. But instinct, discipline, and survival training had taught me something else. Never reveal what you know until the time is right. So I forced myself to stay calm. My face betrayed nothing as I stepped into the kitchen. "Smells wonderful," I said, my voice steady, though my chest burned with disbelief. She turned and laid at me, too wide, too practiced. "I made this specially for you, Dad. It should help with your stomach." Her voice had the right pitch of concern, but her eyes didn't match. They glittered with calculation, like she was watching for my reaction. I sat at my usual place at the table. As expected, she placed the left bowl, the poisoned one, right in front of me. She knew my habits, knew I always sat there, knew exactly how this would play out. It had been planned down to the smallest detail. "Let me just grab some bread," she said, stepping into the pantry. That was my moment. 30 years in the Army had taught me how to move fast, how to act without hesitation. In less than 10 seconds, I was at the counter. I swapped the bowls, placed the poisoned one at her seat, and returned to mine before she came back out. My heart hammered in my chest, but my hands were steady. She returned, loaf of bread in hand, still smiling that hollow smile. Perfect timing. Everything's ready. She carried both bowls to the table and set the one laced with poison right in front of herself. My stomach clenched, not from illness this time, but from the sickening truth of what was happening. My daughter was about to eat the very poison she had intended for me. "How does it taste?" she asked cheerfully, watching as I lifted my spoon. "Perfect," I replied, forcing a calm tone. "Just what I needed." I ate slowly, each bite measured, but my eyes never left her. She took a sip of her own soup, unaware that her plan had already unraveled. She continued eating, smiling, even making small talk, but I wasn't listening. I was studying her face, waiting for the moment when realization, or symptoms, would strike. Every scrape of her spoon against the ceramic bowl was a reminder of the line we had crossed as father and daughter. This wasn't rebellion, or anger, or even estrangement. This was betrayal of the deepest kind. In that moment, sitting across from her at the table, I knew 2 things with absolute certainty. First, that my daughter wanted me dead. And second, that the war I thought I had left behind overseas had just followed me home, wearing my child's face. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Teresa sat across from me, eating her soup with the same casual rhythm as if this were any other dinner. She asked questions, offered small smiles, and even commented on how my color seemed to be coming back. I nodded along, playing the role of the grateful father, all while the truth gnawed at me. I had watched her pour poison into the bowl. I had seen it with my own eyes. But now, that poison was inside her. At first, there was no sign. She seemed comfortable, even relaxed. That gnawing thought crept into my head. What if I'd been wrong? What if it wasn't poison at all? Maybe it really was just vitamins, as she might later claim. My military instincts told me otherwise, but a father's heart is slower to accept the unthinkable. Then I noticed it. the smallest twitch in her expression. Her jaw tightened, as though she was trying to suppress a wince. She lifted her spoon again, but her hand trembled slightly. "You seem better already," she said, her voice just a little too high-pitched, a little too forced. "Yes, much better," I answered, keeping my own voice calm, though inside I was watching her every move. Her smile faltered for a moment as she dabbed her lips with a napkin. Beads of sweat dotted her forehead, though the kitchen was cool. She shifted in her seat, one hand brushing her stomach as if trying to disguise the gesture. That was it, the first symptom. My chest tightened with a mix of dread and grim confirmation. She had poisoned me, planned to watch me suffer and die, but because I had acted quickly, she was now the one feeling the effects. Minutes passed like hours. Her posture grew stiffer, her eyes less focused. She picked at the bread she'd brought, tearing it into tiny crumbs but not eating any of it. When she spoke again, her voice cracked ever so slightly. Maybe I should clean up," she muttered, avoiding my gaze. "Of course," I replied, steady and calm, masking the storm inside me. She gathered the bowls, her movements slower now, less coordinated. The clink of ceramic against the sink echoed louder than it should have, like a bell tolling for the both of us. I stood slowly, feigning fatigue. "I think I need to lie down for a while, let the food settle." Her head snapped up, eyes wide for just a second, before she forced another smile. "Good idea, Dad. Rest, and you'll feel even better tomorrow." Her tone was honey, but her eyes betrayed her. She was watching me too carefully, searching my face for signs of weakness, waiting for her plan to take hold. But the weakness wasn't in me anymore. It was in her. As I climbed the stairs, each step felt heavier, not from illness, but from the crushing realization of what had just taken place. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, had slipped poison into my food with the intent to see me suffer. And yet, she was the one now sweating, the one trembling, the one silently clutching her abdomen while pretending everything was normal. By the time I reached my bedroom, I knew beyond any doubt the war had begun. The symptoms were proof, the poison was real, and the daughter I once thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone willing to trade blood for money. Lying on my bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop my mind from drifting backward. The sounds of Teresa moving around downstairs, cabinet doors shutting, water running, the clink of dishes, should have comforted me. For years I had lived in silence, alone in this house after her mother passed. But now, every sound felt sinister. Every footstep carried the weight of betrayal. It wasn't always like this. Teresa had once been the light of my life. I remembered her as a little girl, no older than 7, climbing onto my lap during thunderstorms. She would bury her face into my chest and whisper, "You'll keep me safe, won't you, Dad?" And I always did. Nothing could harm her while I was around. At least, that's what I believed back then. Her mother, Margaret, had been the balance in our family, the warmth to my discipline, the calm to my sharp edges. When cancer took her, Teresa was only 16, and I thought I could step into both roles. I was wrong. I still see that night in my memory. Teresa standing in this very bedroom, tears streaking down her cheeks, fists clenched at her sides. "You hate me," she had screamed. "You never let me do anything. Mom would have understood. She wouldn't have stopped me from going to that party." I'd tried to explain, to protect her, but all I managed was, "You don't understand how dangerous the world can be. I'm keeping you safe." But she didn't hear safety. She heard control. Without Margaret, there was no bridge between us. We were two broken people, speaking different languages. A year later, when Teresa was 17, the battles grew worse. I remembered her standing in the driveway, dressed in clothes I didn't approve of, clutching car keys I had forbidden her to use. "Everyone else is going," she had shouted. "You can't keep me locked up forever." "As long as you live under my roof, you'll follow my rules," I had answered. Her reply still cut me even now. "Then maybe I won't live here much longer." True to her word, the day after her 18th birthday, she was gone. No hug, no goodbye, just the slam of a car door and the sound of tires crunching on gravel as she drove away. For 10 long years, I barely heard from her. A birthday card without a return address, a 3-minute phone call once in a while, that was all. I told myself she needed space, that she would come back when she was ready, but the truth was simpler and harder. I had lost her. Then, last month, she appeared on my doorstep with 2 suitcases and hollow eyes. "I need somewhere to stay," she said, her voice quiet, avoiding my gaze. I had welcomed her without hesitation. I thought it was a second chance. Maybe it was guilt, maybe loneliness, or maybe just a father's hope that you never stop caring, no matter how old your child becomes. I thought we could rebuild what was broken. I thought we could start again. And now, here we were, my daughter in the kitchen, slipping poison into my food, my daughter watching me carefully, waiting for me to collapse. The memories twisted in my chest. I saw her as a child with scraped knees, crying until I kissed the wound and told her she was brave. I saw her in her graduation gown, beaming with pride as I snapped photos of her smiling face. I saw her curled up on the couch with her mother, laughing at movies on rainy afternoons. How had that little girl become this woman? The one who had just tried to end my life for money. My military training told me to view her as a threat, an enemy in my home, but my heart still saw my daughter. That contradiction, that tug of war inside me, was the worst pain of all. As I lay there, Margaret's photograph on the nightstand caught my eye. Her smile was frozen in time, forever gentle, forever steady. I reached for the frame and whispered, "I wish you were here. You'd know what to do." But she wasn't here. It was just me, a father who had once promised to keep his daughter safe, now trying to decide how to keep himself alive from her. Morning sunlight streamed faintly through my bedroom blinds when I finally decided there would be no more pretending. The night had been endless, filled with pacing, restless thoughts, and the memory of Teresa's hand tipping white powder into my soup. By dawn, I knew what had to be done. When I walked downstairs, Teresa was already at the kitchen table. She looked pale, her hair messy, dark circles under her eyes. One hand rested on her stomach, and her face twisted in discomfort. The poison had found its way home. "Dad," she said weakly, her voice thin and strained, "I feel terrible. My stomach is burning. I think maybe I have food poisoning." I poured myself a coffee, steady and deliberate, never breaking eye contact. She winced as she tried to shift in her chair. Her pain was real, but so was my resolve. "That's interesting," I said, my voice calm but edged with steel. "What exactly did you add to my soup last night?" The words hit her like a physical blow. Her eyes widened, her lips parted, but no sound came out. Finally, she stammered, I don't know what you mean. I just made regular soup." I leaned back, studying her the way I used to study enemies across interrogation tables. "Think carefully, Teresa. What did you put in my food?" Her face blanched. She tried to stand, but her legs gave way, and she sat back down, clutching her abdomen. "Dad, you're scaring me. I would never." "I saw everything," I interrupted, my voice cold and unshakable. "Every movement, every gesture. I watched you slip that white powder into the left bowl, the one you thought I would eat. But when you went to grab the bread..." I paused, letting the silence press in around us. I'd switched the bowls. Her expression collapsed. Shock, horror, and denial all flickered across her face at once. You what? That's impossible." "No, Teresa. It's the truth. The poison you meant for me is in you now." Her hands flew to her throat, then back to her stomach, as if trying to claw the truth out of her own body. No, she whispered. "This can't be happening." My chest ached, not from illness, but from heartbreak. The little girl I once carried on my shoulders was gone. In her place sat a woman who had tried to murder her father. "You tried to kill me," I said, each word falling heavy between us. "Your own flesh and blood." Tears welled in her eyes, streaming down her cheeks. "You don't understand," she sobbed. "I wasn't trying to hurt you. I needed the money. I thought maybe if you got sick, if you ended up in the hospital, things would happen faster." Her words twisted like knives in my chest. "Faster? You thought I'd die sooner so you could collect?" She shook her head violently, choking on her own tears. "It wasn't supposed to be fatal. Just enough to make you weak, maybe have a heart attack. It would have looked natural. No one would have blamed me." The casual way she described my death chilled me more than if she'd screamed hatred. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was calculated, planned, practiced. "Get out," I said quietly, though my tone carried more danger than any shout. "Dad, please." "Get out of my house," I roared, slamming my hand against the table. "You have 10 minutes to pack what you can carry. Then I never want to see you again." Her eyes burned with a mix of desperation and rage. "You can't throw me out. I'm your daughter." My daughter died the moment she put poison in my food, I said coldly. She ran upstairs, drawers slamming, bags thrown together in haste. 8 minutes later, she was at the door, dragging 2 suitcases, her face twisted with fury. "You'll pay for this," she hissed. "This isn't over." The slam of the door echoed through the house like a final gunshot. I was alone again, alone with the terrible truth that my daughter had chosen betrayal over blood. When the house finally fell silent, I sat in my study, staring at the stack of financial papers spread across my desk. The morning's confrontation had left me shaken, but I knew this wasn't over. Teresa's last words, "This isn't over," rattled in my mind like a warning shot. She hadn't acted on impulse. She had planned this. And planned crimes always had motives. I forced myself into the mindset that had kept me alive through 3 decades of military service. Analyze the threat, identify weaknesses, gather intelligence. Emotion could wait. Facts had to come first. The first clue was obvious: money. Teresa had always been restless, but she wasn't stupid. She knew I had assets: a mortgage-free house, a pension from the army, savings I'd carefully built over a lifetime. When Margaret died, I updated my will, leaving everything to Teresa. Back then, it felt right. She was my only child, my legacy. But staring at those documents now, they felt like evidence of my own blindness. Every penny, every brick of this house, every insurance policy, it was all a motive for someone desperate enough. I pulled out the will from the filing cabinet and laid it flat on the desk. Beneficiary: Teresa Brown. If I had died, everything, nearly $700,000 worth of assets, would have gone straight to her. My mind replayed her recent behavior. She'd been asking more questions than usual about my finances since moving back in. Casual-sounding questions at first. Do pensions get taxed? Or what happens to your life insurance if you die suddenly? I'd brushed them off as curiosity, never thinking she might be plotting. But now those questions took on a darker meaning. She hadn't been making small talk. She had been gathering intelligence, just like I used to in the field. Then there were her phone calls, secretive, late at night, always in hushed tones. She'd step outside onto the porch or retreat to her room, shutting the door firmly. If I asked who she was talking to, she waved it off. "Just a friend, Dad." Who was that friend? Another memory surfaced. Teresa had insisted on cooking more often lately. This was strange in itself. As a teenager, she avoided the kitchen entirely. Cooking was Margaret's thing, not hers. And yet, during the past month, she had volunteered to make dinner 3 nights a week. "Let me take care of you," she'd said, her voice just sweet enough to pass as sincere. I thought it was her way of reconnecting. But now, it was clear. She had been rehearsing, testing me, looking for the right opportunity to slip something into my food. The more I pieced it together, the less it looked like a daughter's act of desperation, and the more it resembled a cold, calculated scheme. Still, one question gnawed at me. Where would she get poison? Teresa wasn't a chemist. She wasn't clever enough to source lethal substances on her own. Someone must have helped her. Someone had given her that vial, taught her how to use it, maybe even pushed her toward this plan. That thought chilled me even more than the betrayal itself. If there was another person involved, then my problem wasn't just a broken daughter, it was a conspiracy. I opened my laptop and began searching for white powders that dissolved quickly in liquid and caused delayed symptoms. The results pointed mostly to prescription medications, heart drugs, particularly digitalis variants like digoxin, which could cause nausea, dizziness, and eventual cardiac arrest. The pieces fit all too well. My phone buzzed on the desk. A text message from an unknown number appeared. "You made a mistake. We know where you live." My blood ran cold. This wasn't Teresa alone. She wasn't the mastermind. She was a pawn, or at least a partner, in something much bigger. And whoever was behind this wasn't finished. The threatening text was the final confirmation. Teresa hadn't acted alone. She wasn't capable of orchestrating something this elaborate on her own. She might have harbored resentment, and she clearly had motive, but the precision, the poison, the planning, the timing, this bore the mark of someone else's hand. That morning, I called Emily Carter, the lawyer who had handled our family's affairs for years. My voice shook less than I expected when I told her, "Emily, it's Daniel. My daughter tried to poison me last night. I need legal advice immediately." She was stunned, of course, but she also knew me well enough to believe I wasn't exaggerating. We scheduled a meeting for the afternoon. In the meantime, Emily connected me with someone she trusted, Marcus Sullivan, a private investigator with a reputation for uncovering uncomfortable truths. Marcus arrived at my house the same day, a wiry man in his 50s, with sharp eyes that seemed to scan every corner of the room. He spoke with a calm confidence that reminded me of the officers I'd once commanded. "Mr. Brown," he said after I laid out everything that had happened, "your instincts were correct. She wasn't acting alone. Let me show you something." From his briefcase, Marcus pulled out a tablet and opened a series of surveillance photos. My stomach twisted as I stared at the images. There was Teresa, sitting at a cafe table with a man I didn't recognize. He was lean, maybe early 30s, with slicked back hair and a sharp suit that didn't quite hide the predator in his eyes. His smile was artificial, practiced, the kind you see on people who make a living manipulating others. "Who is that?" I asked, my voice tight. "Hubert Klein," Marcus replied. "Small-time con artist with a long history of fraud, scams, and financial crimes. He's been arrested 4 times for identity theft, real estate scams, and swindling vulnerable women. Never convicted of anything major. He's slippery. But this time, he went further. Much further." Marcus tapped the screen again, playing audio recordings. My heart pounded as I listened. Teresa's voice was unmistakable, soft and hesitant at first, then sharper, angrier. "I just want it to be over. He's old, Hubert. He won't last long. But what if it takes years?" Then came Hubert's reply, smooth and calculating. "We don't have years, Teresa. You want freedom? I need cash. There are faster ways. A little medication slipped into his food. Nothing messy. It'll look natural. By the time anyone questions it, you'll already have the inheritance." My chest tightened as the words sank in. Teresa hadn't stumbled into this. She'd been guided, coached, convinced by a professional predator who knew exactly how to twist her grief, her anger, her need for money into something monstrous. "Why her?" I asked bitterly. "Because she was vulnerable," Marcus explained. "Estranged from family, financially unstable, carrying resentment toward you. Klein has a pattern. He finds people like her, people with access to money or assets, and he pushes them into betraying the very people they should protect. He's done it before, 3 times that we know of. In 2 cases, the victims lost everything. In one, a woman ended up in prison for embezzling from her own mother's trust fund. The tablet displayed more evidence, phone records with dozens of calls between Teresa and Hubert, real estate listings flagged under his name, even preliminary consultations about selling my house. They'd been planning not just to kill me, but to liquidate my life's work as quickly as possible. And then came the worst part, a transcript of one of their meetings. Hubert's voice again, calm and cold. "After he's gone, we'll push for cremation. No autopsy, no questions. The house sells within a month. Clean, simple, and we walk away with $500,000. I felt the air leave my lungs. They hadn't just thought about my death. They'd planned what would happen to my body. Marcus looked me in the eye. "Mr. Brown, I won't sugarcoat this. Klein is dangerous, and your daughter, she's not just a victim here. She made her choice. She agreed to all of this. That means you're facing a conspiracy, not just betrayal." I clenched my fists, the soldier in me reawakening. This was no longer about grief. It was survival and justice. The truth about Teresa and Hubert left me with no illusions. Whatever bond had once existed between father and daughter had been severed the moment she chose to poison me. But now, I had to make that separation legal, final, and undeniable. That afternoon, I sat in Emily Carter's office with a thick folder of evidence spread across her polished desk. Photos of the vial, Marcus's surveillance shots, transcripts of recorded conversations, and my own written account of every detail. Emily read in silence, her face growing tighter with each page. Finally, she closed the folder and looked at me with steady eyes. "Daniel, this isn't just attempted poisoning. This is conspiracy to commit murder. Are you absolutely certain you want to move forward with disinheriting her completely?" "She made her choice," I said, my voice rough. "She tried to kill me for money. If I die tomorrow, everything I've built, my pension, the house, the savings, goes straight to her. And she'll share it with that parasite who convinced her to betray me. That can't happen." Emily nodded, pulling out the paperwork. Then we'll make the changes today. The sooner the better. The next 2 hours were consumed by signatures, clauses, and ironclad legal language. Every line I signed was another cord cut, another tie severed. Complete revocation of the previous will. Removal of Teresa Brown from all beneficiary designations. Transfer of power of attorney to Emily Carter. Medical directives excluding Teresa from any healthcare decisions. It was methodical, clinical, but each signature burned. I was disowning my daughter in writing, declaring her legally dead to me while she still lived. Emily paused midway through and asked, "Where do you want your assets to go instead?" "The veterans of foreign wars," I said without hesitation. "Men and women who actually understand loyalty. Every dollar I earned will go to them, not to someone who tried to murder me." Her pen scratched across the paper. "It's permanent, Daniel. Once filed, there's no undoing this decision." "Good," I replied. Let her learn what it means to lose everything she thought she'd gain. As the documents piled up, I felt a strange mix of grief and resolve. Grief for the daughter I'd lost long before she put poison in my food. Resolve to ensure she would never profit from her betrayal. When the last form was signed, Emily gathered the stack neatly. "We'll file this today. Effective immediately, Teresa Brown has no legal claim to your estate, your home, or your benefits. She's been erased." I exhaled slowly, the weight of years pressing down on me. "She erased herself," I whispered. Emily set her pen down and folded her hands. "Daniel, I have to advise you, this won't be the end. People like Hubert Klein don't stop when the money slips away. They escalate. You've taken away their prize, and that makes you more dangerous to them." I nodded grimly. "Then I'll be ready." Because readiness was the one thing I had left. I had survived battlefields. I had survived loss. I would survive this too. Walking out of Emily's office, I felt both hollow and fortified. Hollow because I had just buried my daughter in the only way I could, on paper, in ink, in front of the law. Fortified because I had closed one door that could never again be opened. Teresa had chosen her side. Now I had chosen mine. For a few days after I signed away Teresa's inheritance, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle outside the window set my nerves on edge. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was a soldier in hostile territory again. Except this battlefield was my own home. I reinforced the locks, installed cameras in the corners of each room, and wired a silent alarm system with a panic button beneath my armchair. 30 years of military service had taught me that preparation is survival, and I knew deep down that Hubert and Teresa wouldn't let this go. My instincts were right. 5 nights later, the sound came, a heavy thud against the front door, followed by the metallic rattle of someone testing the handle. I muted the television and sat perfectly still in my chair, heart steady, every sense on high alert. The thud came again, harder this time, then a vicious kick. The new deadbolt held, but the doorframe cracked under the force. A sharp splinter echoed through the hallway, then silence. "Mr. Brown," a voice called out, smooth, confident, and laced with menace. "We need to have a conversation." It was Hubert. I stayed seated, my hand resting lightly near the button beneath the chair. "Then you should have made an appointment," I answered, my voice steady. The front door burst open with another kick, splintering wide enough for them to step through. Hubert entered first, tall and lean, his eyes sweeping the room like a predator evaluating prey. Teresa followed close behind, her face pale but burning with fury. She spoke first, her voice sharp. "Dad, this is Hubert. We're here to make this simple." Hubert set a sleek leather briefcase on my coffee table with deliberate force. "Sign these papers," he said, his tone calm but commanding. "Transfer the house and nobody gets hurt." I glanced at the papers but made no move to touch them. "And if I refuse?" "See?" Teresa laughed bitterly, pacing behind Hubert like a restless shadow. "Then we'll find another way to get what's mine, just like before." I looked at her, my daughter, the child I once carried on my shoulders. "Inheritance?" I asked, my voice cutting. "You mean the money you planned to steal after murdering me?" Hubert's smile thinned. "That was a misunderstanding. Just a little medication to make you more cooperative. Unfortunately, Teresa got the dosage wrong." "You can't prove anything," Teresa snapped, desperation seeping through her words. Actually, I said, lifting my hand toward the corners of the room, I can. Her eyes followed my gesture, landing on the tiny black domes of the cameras I had installed. For the first time, Hubert's composure cracked. His eyes narrowed, his mouth twisting into a snarl. "Those won't be admissible," he hissed. "Illinois is a one-party consent state," I replied calmly. And as the homeowner, I already gave my consent. The room seemed to shrink around us. Teresa's breathing quickened, her bravado slipping, as she realized the trap had already been sprung. Hubert leaned closer, his shadow falling across me. "You're going to sign these papers," he growled, pushing a pen toward me, "or accidents will happen. Stubborn old veterans who live alone tend to have misfortunes." Teresa moved closer too, her voice almost pleading now. "Dad, just sign them. Once you do, we'll leave you alone." I looked from her desperate face to Hubert's predatory grin, then back to the documents that represented everything I'd worked for. My hands stayed folded in my lap. "You want me to sign away my life? After you poisoned me? After you broke into my home? And you think I'll roll over and obey?" Hubert slammed a fist on the table, rattling the briefcase. "Enough talk. Do it." I exhaled slowly and leaned back in my chair. "I have a better idea." And with a small, deliberate movement, I pressed the panic button hidden beneath the cushion. Somewhere in the distance, the wail of sirens began to cut through the night. The sound of sirens grew louder, filling the night air with a rising wail that cut through Hubert's threats like a blade through silence. His confident sneer faltered for the first time, and he shot a glance toward the curtained window. "You called the cops?" he barked, his smooth composure cracking. "5 minutes ago," I replied evenly. Silent alarm, very reliable. Teresa's face went white, her bravado collapsing into panic. "Dad, how could you do this? We're family." I met her eyes, steady and unflinching. Family doesn't try to murder each other for money. The pounding of boots on the porch, followed by the splinter of the door being forced open, was a sound I welcomed. Within seconds, 3 officers entered with weapons drawn, their flashlights cutting across the shattered frame. "Chicago police!" one of them shouted. "Step away from the table!" Hubert tried to recover, raising his hands in a mock display of calm. "This is harassment. We haven't done anything wrong." Detective Reynolds, the stocky man Emily had promised would handle this case, stepped forward. His sharp eyes swept the room in an instant, landing on the papers spread across my table and the briefcase beside them. "You're Hubert Klein," Reynolds said coldly. "And you must be Teresa Brown." Teresa stammered. "Wait, you don't understand. This is just a misunderstanding." "Save it," Reynolds cut her off. "We've been looking for both of you since yesterday. Outstanding warrants for conspiracy to commit murder." The words seemed to knock the air from Teresa's lungs. She stumbled back, grabbing the doorframe for support. Hubert's jaw tightened, his mask of charm completely gone. "Mr. Brown," Reynolds continued, turning towards me, "are you all right?" "I'm fine, Detective, and yes, I have recordings of everything, video, audio, and written evidence, including their admission to the previous poisoning attempt." Hubert stepped forward aggressively. "He's lying. This old man is paranoid. He's making up stories about his own daughter." "Sir," Reynolds said sharply, signaling his officers, "place your hands behind your back. Now." One officer moved to cuff Hubert, who tensed as if ready to resist, but thought better of it when the second officer leveled his weapon. Another officer turned to Teresa. "Ma'am, step forward. Hands behind your back." Her eyes locked on mine, wide with desperation. "Dad, please, you don't have to do this. We can work this out. I'm your daughter." I shook my head slowly. "You stopped being my daughter when you put poison in my food." Tears welled in her eyes as the officer secured her wrists. "I'll never forgive you for this." "I've already forgiven myself for protecting others from you," I answered quietly. Reynolds crouched by the table, carefully gathering the papers Hubert had brought. "Forged transfer documents, financial records, details of your assets. This is exactly what we needed." He looked up at me. "Between these and your recordings, Mr. Brown, we have more than enough for prosecution." The officers led Teresa and Hubert toward the waiting squad cars. Through my window, I watched as they were separated. Standard procedure to prevent collusion. Hubert fought the cuffs, his face twisted in rage, while Teresa sat in stunned silence, her body trembling with the weight of what she had lost. As the red and blue lights strobed across my walls, the house felt strangely empty. For weeks, it had been filled with suspicion, fear, and betrayal. Now, with them gone, the silence felt heavier than ever. Reynolds lingered, his notebook open. "Mr. Brown, your preparation, the cameras, the documentation, it's impressive. Military background." 30 years, I said. "Preparation, K, pass you alive." He nodded firmly. "And tonight, it just ended 2 criminal careers. They'll both be facing significant prison time." When the squad cars pulled away, their taillights disappearing into the darkness, I stood in the doorway. My daughter was gone, not just from my home, but from my life. And for the first time in weeks, the war inside my house was over. 3 weeks later, I found myself seated in a wooden witness chair inside Cook County Courthouse. The sterile, echoing space felt worlds away from my living room, yet the weight of betrayal pressed on me just the same. On the other side of the room sat Teresa and Hubert. She looked older somehow, as though the weeks in custody had drained years from her face. Her hair was unkempt, dark circles framed her eyes, and her once defiant posture had collapsed into something smaller, weaker. Hubert, by contrast, still tried to project confidence, sitting tall in his suit, jaw set, eyes darting around as though searching for a way to spin the narrative in his favor. Judge Martinez presided from the bench, her tone sharp and steady. "We are here today to deliver judgment in the case of the state versus Teresa Brown and Hubert Klein. Charges: conspiracy to commit murder, attempted poisoning, breaking and entering, and extortion." The prosecution laid out the evidence with meticulous precision. They presented the recordings Marcus had obtained, the surveillance photos of Teresa and Hubert at the cafe, the transcripts of their conversations discussing my death, the forged transfer papers Hubert had shoved onto my coffee table, and most importantly, the hidden camera footage from the night of the break-in. Every damning word, every incriminating gesture was played for the court. Teresa sat frozen, her eyes locked on her hands. Hubert clenched his jaw tighter and tighter, until finally his mask cracked, and he muttered curses under his breath. When it was my turn to testify, I rose slowly, steadying myself before the jury. My voice carried the same firm "Yes, I had used to brief soldiers in the field. I served 30 years in the Army," I began. "I've faced threats in hostile territories around the world, but nothing compares to discovering my own daughter wanted me dead. I watched her poison my soup with my own eyes. I watched her sit across from me and smile while waiting for me to collapse. And I recorded her and her accomplice breaking into my home, demanding my assets under threat of violence. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was premeditated betrayal." The prosecutor nodded, then asked, Mr. Brown, how do you feel about your daughter's conviction?" I turned to Teresa. Her eyes met mine for the first time in weeks, filled with something between defiance and despair. I held her gaze and answered, "Sometimes justice requires difficult choices. I chose to protect future victims over protecting someone who tried to murder me. I chose survival over silence." A hush fell over the courtroom. Judge Martinez reviewed the evidence one final time before delivering her verdict. Her gavel struck once, sharp and final. "The defendants are found guilty on all charges." Sentencing followed swiftly. Teresa was given 6 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole after 4. Hubert, with his criminal history and clear role as the mastermind, received 10 years without early release. As the bailiffs moved to escort them out, Teresa turned to me one last time, her voice cracking. "I'll never forgive you for this." I didn't hesitate. "I've already forgiven myself for protecting others from you." The gavel fell again, and that was it. 28 years of fatherhood ended in the sterile air of a courtroom, not with a hug or a final goodbye, but with a legal decree that stripped away the last illusion of family. When I stepped outside onto the courthouse steps, the sun hit my face, warm and unreally, and ting. It felt like the closing of a chapter I had never wanted to write. My daughter was gone, justice had been served, and all that remained was the question of what life I would build from the ashes of betrayal. When the courtroom doors closed behind me that day, I knew I would never look at life the same way again. The war with Teresa and Hubert was over, at least in the eyes of the law. They would both serve their time, and society would brand them with criminal records that would follow them for the rest of their lives. But for me, the sentence was different. Mine was the hollow echo of a house once filled with memories, now stripped of trust and family. For a few weeks, I stayed in that same house, though every room felt changed. The photographs on the walls no longer warmed me. They haunted me. Teresa smiling at her graduation, Margaret holding her as a baby, Christmas mornings with wrapping paper scattered across the floor. Those moments had once felt eternal, but now they looked like evidence from a life that had died long ago. I couldn't live there anymore. The walls whispered with betrayal. The floor creaked with reminders of her footsteps. So I sold the house to a young couple with children, a family eager to fill its halls with new laughter. I kept only what mattered: Margaret's photograph, her perfume bottle, a few letters, and the medals from my service. Everything else I donated to veterans organizations. If Teresa had taught me anything, it was that blood could betray, but honor never did. With the sale complete, I moved south to a retirement community outside Tampa. The weather was warm, the neighbors were kind, and for the first time in years, I felt the stirrings of peace. The people around me weren't bound by obligation or guilt. They chose to be there, to check in, to share meals, to build something genuine. Every Tuesday, Mrs. Patterson from next door would bring me homemade cookies, insisting they tasted better when shared. On Thursdays, Bill Martinez, a retired Marine, came over with his worn chessboard. We'd sit on the porch, the Florida sunset painting the sky while pawns and rooks marched across the squares. He played aggressively, I played patiently. It made for long, satisfying matches. I also began volunteering at the local VA hospital, helping other veterans navigate the very issues I had just survived: family betrayal, financial manipulation, elder abuse. My story was painful, but it was also useful. When I told other men and women what Teresa had done, I saw recognition in their eyes. Too many of them had children or relatives who saw them as bank accounts rather than people. My warnings, my testimony, gave them the courage to prepare, to protect themselves before it was too late. 6 months after I settled in Florida, a letter arrived in the mail. I recognized the handwriting instantly: Teresa. With shaking hands, I opened it. The words inside were carefully chosen, almost rehearsed. She claimed she had found religion in prison, that she was sorry for what she had done, that she wanted another chance to be my daughter. I read it once, then I folded it, placed it inside the file of legal documents from her case, and shut the drawer. Some bridges, once burned, should never be rebuilt. Emily called me occasionally to check on how I was adjusting. She told me the veterans of foreign wars had used my estate donation to launch a new elder abuse prevention program. "You didn't just save your own life," she said. "You've saved countless others who might face what you faced." Her words stayed with me. I hadn't wanted to be an example, but perhaps that was the only good thing to come from my daughter's betrayal. My pain became someone else's protection. One evening, as the sun sank into the Gulf, Bill called to confirm our next chess game. I sat on my porch, the warm breeze carrying the scent of orange blossoms, and realized something profound. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who choose you, who stand beside you when they don't have to. Sometimes it's neighbors with cookies, or fellow veterans who know your scars, or a community that values honesty over obligation. I had lost my daughter, but I had gained something better: a chosen family built not on duty or expectation, but on loyalty, joy, and respect. The nightmare was over. Real life, simple, steady, and genuine, could finally begin